You are watching Lesson 7 for beginning students of the Dance of the Eye and the Hand. Today, we will look at painting a basic mountain, working with outline, with shading lines, and introducing how to add wash to a painting.
Welcome back. Good to see that you're hanging in with us. Today, we're going to do a little more in Chinese landscape painting, and I'm going to introduce you to mountain as a form. And we'll learn about doing outlines and shading lines and introducing how to do some wash on a painting as well. So let's get started. So now we have our ink ready. Let's pick up a little bit of ink from the dish or from the stone and work it into our brush. I'm turning the brush as I work the ink up into it and not twisting the hairs, but just pulling them straight. So I have my hairs parallel, hairs in a row. And then I'll use my test sheet to test it. Press, hold, just pick up a little bit more. I have my sheet of paper here. I've tested to be sure I have the smoother side up. And we're going to do a mountain. Mountains, like trees, can have a way of expanding, so you want to really kind of contain them so there's some pressure there. I'll start with the shading, and I'm starting sort of inside the mountain form. And while I still may have the same fingering as I do calligraphy, thumb towards me, 2 fingers away, 2 fingers towards me, I have a more relaxed grip, so I can use more of the side of the brush as I go. I can vary some of the thickness. So I'll start in the center and just doing some outline, and again thinking about what it is that I'm painting, and what I'm painting is a mountain. So it's a strong line. It can be a line that goes from thick to thin, but as I'm pulling it down, I want to come straight at myself. I don't want to curve out or curve in because that'll weaken my mountain. I want it to look like it's disappearing into the mist. Then we'll do another outline. Again, starting up above, coming down. This is similar to how we did rocks, of starting up near the top and then coming downward, doing one side and then the other side. And let's do another shape up here. And then one more above it. Coming down here. And they can be done in sections. It's not all one straight line. I've varied this. I didn't cut it all off at the bottom, so you get the sense of the mist moving through. So that's my outline. Next, we're going to do shading line, and I want to sort of dry off the brush a bit. I don't want it too wet. And I'm going to use more of a blunted edge. It's not a point, so I can bring down some shading lines. And down, hugging the outside of this outline. And think of this is adding texture. It's also adding height. It's also adding some dynamic. I do one side, I do the other side. And I'm not just making a smear, but I'm really wanting to have an identifiable line. I'm also, while hugging these close to the outline, I'm keeping some white space open on the outside, and that helps make my mountain taller. And you want to vary these. They can vary in position, they can vary in length. But again, like the outlines, they need to be straight. That's adding to the sense of height. And then the other side. here. And I might start, like I did with the rock, higher into the form, but coming down and again, just really hugging or even connecting with the outside of those outlines and allowing some white space to flow to give my mountain some height. And some length. So we have our outlines, we have shading lines. Now I'm going to take a little bit of water, put it in my mixing dish, wash my brush out, and I want to make a nice, really light gray. And if it's not light enough, I'll grab some tissue here. Just take a couple of sheets of tissue, fold it down, dry my brush, maybe add a little more water, but I want a lighter gray, not even a middle gray, but a light gray. We even go lighter than that. If you're having trouble getting a light gray, you may want to go wash your brush out and start fresh. I want it just a bit lighter. Okay, dry it, reload it, and there we have a nice light gray. I don't need a lot in here. It doesn't have to be soaking wet with the wash. But what I'm going to do is go back to where I put my shading lines and add some more lines, but this is with a gray wash. And so I'm just refining the spaces, patterns that I already did. Again, I'm going to hug this wash to the outside of that outline. Now this might be a little bit too regular, so I can use the wash to refine what I already did with the shading lines. If I go quickly with my wash, I get a very feathery, very light line. If I go slow, the slower I go, the more ink I have on my paper, and so I can make it darker just by going over the same area in the same tone will give me a darker tone. Let's do this side. Again, doing a little feathering, making the design of it a little more interesting. And again, it's not a wash like you would in a Western watercolor where you're just covering a whole broad area. We are still doing strokes here. And I'm just following that outline, which then makes, if I close the white space on the outside of the outline, this then pops forward, and that'll continue as we continue with our wash on the mountain. And again, I've allowed just even the sliver of white space to continue, and that helps give me the height to my mountain. And again, I'm trying to vary these a little more than I did when I first did the outline, just to add a little more visual interest. But again, running close to the outside of that outline, which firms up my shape, and then feathering just to give it a little more action and dimension. Giving these a second hit. And then I continue. Now in Chinese painting, we would call this a good example of ink accumulation. I'm using the strength of the paper, which allows you to add layer and layer and layer to accumulate the ink. And anything I put down is then stable. What I've already painted is not going to move anywhere. It's permanent. And if I have little leaks here, I want to close those up just to contain the energy. And again, really putting the weight, putting the pressure. There, I'm closing that little air hole too. And you're varying your pressure. Some of it's light, so you get a nice sort of ragged edge. And some can be heavier and getting you more tone. Again, the slower you go, the darker it's going to be. The more you just brush the surface of the paper, the lighter it's going to be. And both are good and can be varied. Again, I'm just hugging that outline, coming down, and then just adding a few more shading lines as I go. Now, if I wanted to add one more element to this, I could put a little more of that wash in my brush, and I could add a distant mountain, just a little bit of outline. And another one. And let's say one more. And then some shading lines, and these can be pretty simple because they're in the distance. And again, I'm varying where the bottom is, so there's some movement there. And here I would just leave it at that as a distant mountain. So I have my mountain. We started with black outlines working from the center of the object going outward, remembering to keep it coming straight at you as you come down, which is a challenge. You'll tend to want to drift one way or the other. Once I've completed my outline, dry the brush a little bit, and then did my shading lines. And these are really using the side of the brush to get a little more scraping. You're not in a calligraphy stance, not going straight down, but at the side. And like, this can also be thought of like water coming down. It should flow and give the piece height. As you're doing that, you're maintaining this little corridor of white, and that helps give the height to the shape. Then I mixed up a light wash. If my wash is too dark, wash out your brush, start fresh, because there may be too much ink in your brush already. And then again, doing this as line work, but with the wash, with the light gray, just coming down and adding to the surface. And that's our lesson for mountain. Let's give this a try. So next time we will introduce Chinese numbers, how to do them individually from 1 to 9 and the character for 0. We'll also learn the characters for year, month, and day, so you'll be able to then take any of your pieces that you've done and add a date to it. And so whether the mountain or any other piece, hang on to that, so next time when we get together, we can learn Chinese numbers, learn how to make today's date, and then I will inscribe this to show you how to put a date on your painting. So until next time, go paint.
Before you go, one last note. The handouts for the Dance of the Eye and the Hand for beginning students and continuing students, all lessons, are posted as downloadable PDFs at www.laughingwatersstudio.com. Have a good day. You have been watching Distance Learning from Laughing Waters Studio.